Hey everybody, this is Dark Guardsman. We're back with another video. Now, just a few quick updates real quick, as there's not been a huge amount of progress in terms of when we're going to get done, and cool things have been happening. What has actually been going on is I've just been going through the code, cleaning it up, getting recipes done, getting the stuff really ready for the beta release, which I'm hoping to get done this week. That's a really big hope. Unfortunately, I got two big projects due this week for class, so it's hit or miss if we get done on time. But it's getting to the point where if you guys want to download the alpha version to start using it, it's almost completely stable. I haven't done a lot of multiplayer testing, but I do know the single player works really well. I've tested pretty much all the explosives to full extent you can pretty much test them to, and almost all of the recipes are done now. So we actually have recipes if I start going through and actually clicking things. We get things like for the glass button, poison powder works. Sulfur and saltpeter don't have recipes at the moment. I'm going to figure out how we're going to do this right now. We'll talk about that in a second. Antimatter, like you can go through these and you can actually sit here and look at them. Now some of the devices, even though they have recipes, don't actually show up for the reason that a lot of the items that are required are not there. That's the reason why you see these pink cubes, by the way, is I'm going through the process of actually adding missing items that are needed for the crafting recipe. We'll talk about that as well in a second, but you can go through here and you can click any of these, and well, you can click most of them. Almost all the cards are done. I think I've talked about the previous video. Almost all the grenades are done. Almost all the missiles have recipes. There's only a few of them that don't have recipes at the moment. That's like the cluster ones that just simply haven't got to it yet. All the block recipes are there. They all work. The only exception is things like the EMP, which didn't have a recipe in the 1.7 version, so we don't have one in the 1.12 either. I'm more likely going to get to that. The nuclear recipe also uses uranium ingots at the moment, so the recipe doesn't show for that. We'll get to that as well. So almost all the recipes are there. All functionality is working really good. We've only got minor issues with rendering at the moment, where you can see like rendering problems with that. Almost all the renders for the explosions are working. Sound is still an issue, but I did mention we'll get to that after the beta is released out, just simply because it'll take me a lot of time to fine tune that, and everything else is just not worth the time. All the GUIs are working pretty well now. Anti-missile system is good. I mentioned on Twitter and Discord and on YouTube that the anti-missile system wasn't working properly. However, I did show a video that it is working, and for those who still haven't figured that out, yeah, it's working now. The only really major flaw with the anti-missile system is that it's not 100% effective. It will shoot down missiles, and missiles will explode and die, but there's a process for setting it up. I'll probably do a video on it later, but it's very simple. Try to aim your missile towards the direction you expect missiles to come from, and then put your radar between your aim point and your actual launcher. That way your radar will trigger early and trigger the missile, and then the missile will fly over top of the radar towards where you expect that missile to be coming from, and actually should hit the missile. Definitely going to be doing a lot of balancing tweaks on those and everything else, but we'll definitely talk about that another time. What I do want to talk about is some of the changes we're going to be doing to ICBM over the future. Now, I sat and I thought about it for a while, and the original plan when we were going to update ICBM to 1.12 was just update it, get it running, get everything working, and that was it. But as I'm looking at the code and I'm working through it and I'm toying with stuff, I'm realizing that in order to make this mod usable, actually usable in a mod pack, I'm going to need to do a lot more work on it than just simply update it and make sure everything's running. This includes a ton of work on just usability, which was already planned to start with, but I was just going to do that later. But we're going to do that more likely sooner than later. So a lot of the GUIs are going to get overhauled. A lot of this stuff's going to get reworked because this stuff's just kind of atrocious to look at. Especially things like the radar system, as they're not intuitive, which for those people who don't understand what intuitive means, it basically means if you look at it, you can understand how to use that GUI without being told how to use it. And some of these GUIs are pretty straightforward, like this is like X and Z coordinate. You can figure that out pretty quickly. But then you start getting to some of these other ones, like what is detonation height, what is lock height. You can kind of guess what detonation height is, because that's going to be the height it detonates at. I'm not even sure that even works in the mod. Lock height's a little bit more confusing, as it basically what it does, it tells this missile what height above the launcher do I need to go to before I start curving, and that's not explained. Of course, getting a white in here would be really appreciated in order to help people understand this, but that's not going to happen for a while as well. There's also things like the energy bars aren't rendering, status is unclear, inaccuracy, like what's that exactly mean. So what's going to really likely happen is I'm going to start implementing tabs over here like I do with a lot of the other mods, and you're going to start seeing like very intuitive layouts. One of the things I've got figured out for the lock height is I'm going to actually show a picture right below it of how that works. So when you start increasing the lock height, it'll start showing like, hey, like actually let's do a paint picture real quick so it makes it very clear what I'm talking about. So say this was, actually hold on, let's get a pencil out. So say here's our missile launcher, and I'm not an artist here, so this is going to look horrible. I could draw much better by hand than I can by this. So we'd have a picture like this, and this would be our lock height, and it would say like something like lock next to it. And it would go, okay, here's this, and then this would be your target point, and you would have like some kind of picture, and I'll get somebody else probably to work on the art for this, but you would have something like that, and that would be really cool because you put that right below the value, even though it would take up a lot of GUI space, hence why we're going to use tabs. It would explain without any doubt what that exactly does. And we'll do the same thing for detonation height. So say if we detonation height come down here, we'd be like, okay, here's our actual detonation height, and then here's our target. And it would just explain with a simple graphic, kind of pictography graphic, of how this works. This would be like detonation is what it'll say next to it. Most likely we won't even use the words. We'll try to use symbols, and we'll put the symbols right next to the fields. That way it's real easy to understand, because one big thing is that we have to consider translations when we do these art and stuff. But that's one of the things I wanted to talk about we're going to work on. That's probably no surprise to any of you because I've talked about doing that before. We're definitely going to be redoing some of the textures. I will not probably redo like any of the models outside of fixing problems with them. Of course, like Z fighting down here, definitely want to fix that. Probably going to redo all of the models in Blockbench, but make sure they still look the same with minor tweaks here and there. Same thing with the missiles. They're probably going to get recreated in things like Blockbench, or more likely we'll do dot object for the actual missiles, but Blockbench for maybe these. That's, again, probably not a surprise to anybody else. Some of the things I am going to be doing that probably is a little bit more surprise that people probably didn't expect, we are going to be implementing a ton of crafting items. One, the recipes just are dated. They're incredibly dated. Some of these now have actual recipes implemented to them, and a lot of them do still match the old ones. But I have gone through and fixed a few of them, and I had to do this all by hand, which is the reason why it's taking as long as it is. I really should have built a piece of software to do the recipes. There's tons of them. If you just look at the fact of missiles, if I open this up and go down to the EX, I did all of these by hand. So I went through and looked at what the recipes were in the 1.7 version, and I copied them over and actually went through that. I did that for all the explosives. Definitely should have made myself a piece of software for that, so it had taken a lot of time. But some of these other recipes, like the tools and stuff. So the diffuser, which is what the recipe looks like for it, has been changed. It originally was, I believe, a wire, an axe, and I think a circuit board is what it was. I have changed this. I'm probably going to work on it a little bit more. It didn't make as much sense. I left the axe in there though because people were having a nice laugh at it over the Discord, and I was like, you know, I'm keeping it just for the joke now. But that was changed as now, so this is a little bit more complicated. I'm going to make sure the recipes are cheap though. I do not want there to be a high recipe gating cost to a lot of stuff in here. Some stuff will have recipe gating costs, but some stuff won't. Rocket launcher I did make a little cheaper. It used to require a cruise launcher in the crafting recipe, and I was like, that makes no sense. The cruise launcher is actually a pretty late game item. For those who also know, the cruise launcher is not there either anyways, so I couldn't use it in the recipe if I wanted to. Which will be re-implemented, by the way. It's just I have to eventually get around to it. Cruise launcher was one of the more complicated tiles in the mod, mainly because I had a lot of angular math in order to fire, and it won't be too hard to implement again, just I gotta, later is when it happens. So a lot of these recipes are going to get overhauled, and there's going to be a lot of crafting items, which right now we've got them in here. I'm going to keep it simple, and these are implemented in a very simple way too, so I can update them and adjust them as we go. Really simple item that I pass in an array of what type of item I want with it. Incredibly simplistic. You'll probably see this in a few other mods that have been made before. Usually I use enums for this, and in 1.7 I use JSON for this as well. But in this version of the mod, I'm just going to do a simple array because these items have no purpose outside of crafting. So we got some basic ones in here. Big thing, the reason why this is actually started is we didn't have the chips. And I didn't want to, A, redo the recipes with vanilla items, and B, I didn't want to rely on another mod. Because I want this mod to be self-sufficient, which is another reason why I'm working into all these items and recipes. Another thing I'm going to be working on is probably adding some little small, useful items that are not inherently ICBM based, but you would see in another mod, but once again, since we don't want to depend on another mod, we have to add them. So that's going to be things like batteries, probably going to do some wrenches, some other tools. I'm going to be implementing battery boxes, furnaces, and a few other things. Now there won't be an electric furnace or something, but there'll be like a generator. So you'll be able to generate your power, and you'll be able to store it in a battery box, and you'll be able to take batteries and move them around and stuff like that. I'm not 100% sure if I'll put cables in this mod or not, simply because it's just far easier to make a mod for 112 that has wires in it that you guys could download from me if you wanted to use my custom wires, or go find another mod. But the simple thing is we will have some batteries and we'll have a generator, and to make it somewhat ICBM themed, there'll be EMP resistant machines, so that way when they get hit by an EMP they are not impacted as hard. I will still have them impacted because I want to make sure there's some kind of tiering system going on, and as well make sure that this does balance with other mods, so those will be implemented. As far as I know, the battery does work. I haven't tested yet. I really quickly built out the code for this. The code is very, very simple. This is everything it contains, and most of this is just dedicated to displaying information. For example, we've got just this 2 parts is entire information based. This is the only functional piece in the entire thing, and the only thing that does is just returns an energy battery object, so that way when we charge up the battery it should work. We can actually probably test this too, which I have JEI finally installed, so I don't have to dig through the creative tab or everything. Let's see if I can find a generator. We got the snow generator, but it doesn't have a battery slot in it, so let's grab Actual Edition's cool generator. How do we actually... That's actually... I don't know how to use this properly. Oh yeah, cheat enabled. That probably would help. Okay, maybe... Fun times when you don't even know how to use the mod you just installed. I'm so used to NEI where you just shift click and pull stuff out. So we'll go do it through this system real quick, and we'll get ourselves some coal here. And yeah, we'll just grab blocks of coal. So we'll put this down and we'll test to see if it works. So actually, this doesn't have a battery slot in it. Well, at least we'll generate some power real quick. Is there like a charging station? We probably want to do this through the creative tab. I'm not familiar with Actual Editions either. I could have swore it had some kind of charging stand in it. This is where planning a video is entirely important. Charge. I mean, it's got its own batteries. I can go look at this code if I ever get confused and see if my battery doesn't work. Battery box. Let's see if this is exactly what I want. Maybe not. Maybe I just right click on it? Nope. That is really confusing. I really should read the manual for this mod. Auto breaker, long range breaker, range collector, item repairer. Powered furnace. Energizer, maybe. Maybe this is what I want. Oh, this might work. Haha, it does work. Yeah, and the item actually does charge, so that's cool. So these are done, and what I'm thinking about actually doing for the battery box, at least I got 2 thoughts right now. So we can go with an IC2 style battery box, is one of the ideals I do think I want to implement, or we can go with the old original resonant induction style battery box. And what the original induction one was is, if I can go and actually grab what it was based on, is the ideal was to use like something like this where you had a limited battery slot system, and what you would do is you would stick batteries in it. I'm going to use explosives here just temporarily, just to demonstrate, but you would stick batteries actually in the GUI, and then you would charge the batteries and discharge the batteries in order to power your items and everything. At least that was the concept that I'm planning on possibly doing. The reason I want to do that is because then all I have to do is make a single machine that then charges items, and then you could charge and discharge anything in it. So you could put energy cubes in there from mechanism or anything, and it would work just fine. So those are the things I'm going to probably do with the mod over the future, and I can't think if there was anything else I wanted to talk about, because we got the recipes, we got the new items that are going to be implemented, new machines. Probably going to be doing a much more complicated system for the anti-ballistic. One of the reasons behind this is we've got this little radar station, and this is needed to pretty much trigger the anti-ballistic system, but it doesn't actually talk to the anti-ballistic system. It simply just relays redstone, triggers it, and then that will fire and do stuff. What I'm thinking about doing, and this is already planned, is I'm definitely bringing back the old radar station. This thing's kind of cool, it looks okay, but that nice 3x3 little radar dish that spun around was really, really nice. So we're bringing that back definitely if it's just decorative item. The other thing is I'm thinking about implementing a block that links to the radar station and then links to the launcher. And what I'm thinking I'm going to do with it is I think I'm going to replace the control panel with it. And what this will be like an anti-missile control system. And what you'll do is you'll simply put a target location in it just like you normally would. So you still have a GUI very similar to this. You would still have your lock height in here, but you wouldn't have a detonation height. And what you would do is you would link that to your radar system. Radar system would go, hey, I've got 10 inbound targets. Who wants to claim the target? And then one of the anti-ballistic missile computers will go, yeah, I'll claim that target. And then it'll fire a missile at that. It'll track the missile the entire time. And it will not fire another missile until that missile it's using is dead or the enemy target is dead. And then it'll fire another missile to hit the next target, and so on and so on. And that way, with the radar station, you can track how many missiles you've got in the air, so that way you're not wasting ammo. 2, you can set up engagement areas, which will be kind of nice. So you can set up a radar system, a computer, and go, hey, I've got these 3 silos that I want to be aiming to the north at all times. And that way you have 3 missiles you can have in the air, and you can engage 3 targets at a time. And you have a much higher efficiency too, so say if 3 missiles are coming in, you can hit 3 missiles. Instead of having 1 missile come in and you wasted all 3 missiles and you wasted a lot of resources. That's just the thing I'm thinking about doing. Of course, I'm thinking about doing a lot more additions of that style of machinery. I was originally against adding blocks to this mod simply because what I was doing is I'd set my mind up into maintenance mode. And the idea behind maintenance mode is that you're only updating and polishing what you're working on. You're not actually putting real effort into it to make it actually better, make it improve it over time. And that was probably the most worst ideal I've ever come across, at least coming out of my head, is that I really do need to actually make this mod better, improve its graphics, improve its gameplay and everything else. So before I continue rambling on and make this video into a 20-minute video, I'm going to stop here and I'll be back with more videos here. I'll probably do a couple of tutorials, do a couple talks specifically aimed at individual blocks and what I'm thinking about doing with them, and of course more videos showing off new features. So when I get the battery box done, we'll probably do a video on that. I get the crafting items done, we'll maybe do a video on that one. I don't think it's worth a video doing crafting items, but I'll stop and leave you guys there.